Wait, remember Ultimate Muscle? Well, if you got to experience the slew of 4Kids TV programs in the early 2000s, this very odd, over-the-top wrestling cartoon will surely ring a few bells. The history behind Ultimate Muscle and why it's such an interesting topic is that what we got in the States, being known as Ultimate Muscle, really is only a small part of something way larger in Japan that has had its own legacy, where to us, not knowing much of any of that as a kid, just got what we were presented, and hung out with these other shows like Kirby Right Back Atcha and Fighting Foodons during the Foxbox days before the 4Kids branding fully erased the Foxbox from existence. But I'll never forget when all the cartoons at the time were edited together to have them fight for the Foxbox. You can't take those memories away from me. I was never that big into wrestling, but if you put wrestling into an action series in both mediums of manga and anime, then yeah, sign me up. It's the classic battle of good and evil, just with weird and interesting characters that uniquely stand out from one another. This series is full of comedy, it's full of action, it's full of men fighting each other, it involves space. I mean, stop me when you're sold. It's as ridiculous as it sounds. It's part of a larger legacy than just this show presents itself as, and it scratches this incredibly niche nostalgic itch of watching it along with the other programs around it at the time. Today, I wanted to dig into Ultimate Muscle and re-experience a show that I enjoyed both on TV and read in manga form thanks to Shonen Jump, and discuss its legacy, being part of a larger one without needing to be well versed on it. This is Ultimate Muscle. Ultimate Muscle follows the journey of our main character, Kid Muscle, who is already struggling to live up to the legacy of his father, being the complete opposite of him in many ways. When your father is King Muscle and is claimed to be the strongest man alive, sure, that's a lot of pressure, but even more so when your father is a member of the Muscle League, which has these top extra muscular heroes who act as the protectors of many worlds throughout space to stop any evil threats that head towards any planet under their watchful eyes. But a lot of time has passed and our heroes of yesterday are now the heroes of today, just older and in need of the next generation to step up once the DMP group of bad guys, or as it stands for Destruction, Mayhem, and Pain, come fist-bumping Earth and get let loose upon the land, causing the Intergalactic Wrestling Federation to scatter out a warning. But the evil may be too great as it has begun taking out our OG heroes since they are a little too old, a little too rusty to keep up with these younger threats after nearly 30 years of peace. Being one of the original programs that was presented on the Foxbox, it had some big shoes to fill, much like our main character himself, being something so different to a lot of Western audiences. On the surface, it's easy to see why Ultimate Muscle was selected to be one of the shows in general to make their way to the States and receive the classic 4Kids dub. The popularity around anime was quickly rising where big franchises were getting worldwide acclaim. You mix that in with something like wrestling and it's bound to get some more attention. Kid Muscle is a likable, relatable, and yet predictable character for us to follow. His father is a legend and he's, well, anything but. Voiced by Mark Thompson, Kid Muscle was trained heavily under his father, but he didn't have the want to follow in his footsteps. What's the benefit of knowing how to fight or wrestle if you're more of a coward who has other interests in life, like women and food being his main joys, and same honestly. But with him getting to grow up with a more privileged life that he takes for granted on a day-to-day basis, this makes him come off as a disappointment to the family legacy. He would rather avoid all confrontation as much as possible instead of fighting, where thanks to this, it seems that he never inherited the special family ability to access a deeper power of true strength known as the Ultimate Muscle. But I mean, clearly he has it, he just has to, unlock it. But this life that Kid takes for granted soon gets flipped and turned upside down when the legacy of his family requires him to step up and not be this cowardice and lazy person anymore, to which he still pushes back from and runs away, but ends up in a spacecraft that brings him from his home and right to Earth, where he really starts losing his choice to not be a hero.
No one can help you. Not even Mommy. What the? Ultimate Muscle, only in the Foxbox.
While Ultimate Muscle contains its own story about a kid having to overcome his personal shortcomings and deal with family legacy, the keyword for this whole franchise is legacy, with Ultimate Muscle only being part of what makes up the Kinnikuman series. Created by Yude Tamago, the combined special pen name for the writer-artist duo Takashi Shimada and Yoshinori Nakai. The series started off as a manga series in Weekly Shonen Jump from 1979 to 1987, and it eventually went on to have its own anime adaptation animation made that was released throughout the mid-80s. The series focused on King Muscle, obviously known as Kinnikuman before reaching the title of King and then getting the name Americanized for the sequel series, Ultimate Muscle, at least here. The stories in the franchise spread out wide around what we ended up just receiving in the States. But for what it was, it's still a solid, self-contained story, but one that has the luxury of those interested to find out a lot more than what was presented. As someone who had just visited Japan, there was a surprising large presence for this series still around, and I even picked up the Japanese version of the GameCube game I used to play when I was younger, so that's fun. I think it's just cool to see something that here where I live be something that lives in the past of the early to mid 2000s nostalgia, still be so active and well liked in a complete different region of the world. It's one thing hearing about it, it's another thing firsthand seeing it. Before even getting to Ultimate Muscle, the franchise created a line of toys to market off the popularity of the manga and the anime in the 80s. These little rubber toys would feature some of the really cool designs of wrestlers. So as the show and the manga were ending their initial run in Japan, Mattel saw an opportunity with the property to bring the toys stateside, but trying to get rid of the expensive middleman selling point of recutting the anime for American audiences, nor translating any of the manga. So they have these figures with no baked-in reason to buy them, since no one would know where they're from, but the simple fix though would just be making something up. Take these Bandai created figures that you could get out of gachapon machines in Japan and strip away the initial branding. Born from this decision was Muscle, an acronym that stands for millions of unusual small creatures lurking everywhere. Well, sure, it sounds 80s enough for what kids want. It was another collectible craze, having so many unique designs for the toys. I don't know about millions, there were only a bit over 230 of them, but unusual, yeah. For those who have no clue what these designs are from, it sure fits that description. Collect these weird wrestling characters, as you need to get them in order to save the world from their takeover, or that's what the marketing would have sold you on. You still had your recognizable mascot for the series of toys, even getting a name just known as Muscle Man, as well as the main bad guy having the name of Terry Bull. So it had this loose connection for those in the States getting sold on them, despite the more rich history of every character to the series in Japan. Surely, this was an interesting time and a cool look into IP distribution around the world, and how things can easily be used for repackaging to make it more marketable in different regions. Today, while that still may happen, the world is more connected than ever as we celebrate different franchises from all around the world. Repurposing something from Japan to bring it to the States doesn't work as well as just bringing something from Japan directly to the States. The toys, however, while nostalgic for the kids of the 80s, ended their run as the interest for them wore off when more designs weren't created, just reprints with new colors on them that weren't that base beige color. As Japanese media started to become more popular across the world, the adoption of anime and manga became more and more mainstream for the younger generations to get into, with Shonen Jump bringing their manga magazine over to the States, and 4Kids wanting to bring some anime selections to TV through their licensing deals. Ultimate Muscle became the clear open choice for them to go after. In 2001, 4Kids acquired Ultimate Muscle along with a couple other Japanese properties as they put out a press release selling the excitement of Kinnikuman the Ultimate Muscle before it would be known as just Ultimate Muscle in the States. They were showcasing this property as the new face of action-adventure cartoons, coming from Toei Animation, who had already brought the animation of Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon to the world. So this had all the buzzwords needed to cause some excitement. Fast forward to September 14th, 2002, Ultimate Muscle would premiere on the Fox Box alongside a few other shows as the group of productions that launched the Fox Box. Over the years, more shows were added to the block and the Fox Box branding would eventually change, but Ultimate Muscle was there from the jump. Back to the overall story of the show, Kid Muscle ends up on Earth now thanks to the spacecraft and instantly meets Meat, a sidekick character that fills the role of advisor to help out alongside Kid Muscle and mentoring him to be more like his father in several ways, since he was the one who helped his father in the past, from training to managerial roles. That was his gig. Voiced by Mike Pollock, Meat gets to help convey a lot of the emotional struggle Kid may have to understanding himself and the destiny his family legacy holds. The show really plays out similar to how Naruto went on to handle things, having a sequel series with Boruto, with that focusing on the next generation of characters from that franchise while still dealing with the OGs a bit. Here, Kid meets with and ends up working with characters that are all children or descendants of previous heroes, with them having to figure out how to handle the new evils that are out there. The new generation of heroes must train to become as strong and as talented as the previous generation, if not more so, to go on and face the DMP. But Kid Muscle is usually our main focus, watching him consistently get himself into situations that he no longer wants to be involved in until the strength to not run away and become a hero comes flooding back thanks to the others who cheer for him to be granted. great, or if meat can help him overcome his more shame and fear-filled moments. This would always lead into some wrestling matches of great, albeit sometimes stiff, matchups of interesting characters that get you invested in what feels like this underdog story. Both Japan and the US have a large attachment to wrestling, especially at the turn of the century, where wrestling in the States had large personalities and personas, and for the Japan wrestling scene, there was a lot of similarities and even more over-the-top stuff going on. The show didn't hide this combination of what was working on both ends of the wrestling scene, taking some huge influential liberties in representing the bad guys or the heels, but they were also legit bad guys, can't forget that part, and giving us an underdog who has to prove himself worthy of the ultimate muscle power to help face off against these evildoers. With a series that sounds pretty easy to bank on doing well and capturing interest, why did Ultimate Muscle not continue to grow in the US, where it did continue to build a stronger legacy in Japan?
World renowned for his physique, the incredible Mr. Cheeks.
It's no secret that the name Ultimate Muscle doesn't mean as much in the States as it can in other places anymore, but why is that? It helped launch the Fox box into having an opening for more anime dubs to come over to the States. Well, part of this is due to the usual interference of 4Kids editing when they were tweaking it all for the dub. It's a two-edged sword really, as without them bringing over Ultimate Muscle when they did, there could be many of people from that time who just never got introduced to plenty of properties through 4Kids licensings and dubbings, unless they knew what they were trying to find on the younger age of the internet. The other edge is that the dubs usually weren't great for many reasons, from the voice acting to regional edits and cultural differences to just random decisions that made it more somewhat marketable in the region, at least according to them. While the original series in Japan, as well as even the manga that was brought to the US throughout Shonen Jump and Viz, they were specifically aimed towards an older teen audience, while the anime on the Fox box was made to appeal to a bit younger than that, which makes it hard to sell one audience when the property itself isn't cohesive in that way. That's partially why Yu-Gi-Oh! Changed itself to align with the popularity of the card game, rather than keep it the way it was like with the first 7 volumes of the manga, or the animated series of it known as Season 0. But that's a video for another time. Supposedly, the creators of it weren't overjoyous with a lot of the more Americanized edits, having a lot less input on the creative side when it was being brought over, and the extended sides of the media didn't take off as much, with Bandai not seeing as big of a return as they'd like to from stuff like the action figures or the battle card game. Ultimate Muscle is as every bit of fun that wrestling can be for those that watch, but if you're like me, who never was that big into wrestling growing up, it still is able to capture my attention thanks to the characters themselves and the action of it all. I was waiting to relive this show in a more accessible way, and recently, thanks to Discotech Media, the series was released on Blu-ray, and it's been a great way to revisit it. The show doesn't do anything too different to stand out when it comes to the action aspect of things, being very much on the same level as many other anime within this fighting action genre of the time, but it does get to have fun with what it's doing. It makes sure that the comedy plays a big aspect throughout the series, from Kid himself and his struggles to be this brave and strong fighter, to the entertaining side of the cast of unique characters, both friend and foe. The supporting cast gives us characters like Kevin Mask, voiced by Ted Lewis, who is this lone wolf, morally ambiguous character that, despite having a rivalry with Kid, also gets offered an extension of friendship from him. There is also this regular human girl named Roxanne, voiced by Lisa Ortiz, that comes in as a love interest for our main character to be interested in, only helping this fact for him to want to be brave and fight since she's a wrestling fan. And this is one of those one-sided romantic interests. But regardless, it helps him become more focused when he needs it. Terry, voiced by Greg Abbey, is another important ally of Kid throughout the series, who struggles with his own family legacy, having a hard time finding a way to not live in his father's shoes while becoming his own person. We get to watch as Terry and Kid get to build a natural friendship and support system, and I just appreciate how other characters in the show have deeper narratives about their characters in which we get to explore. There is a long list of supporting characters that do get to add in a bunch of fun for the series and aid in helping Kid become the best version of himself he can be. And a lot of the time, these characters and their names are just puns or playoffs of real wrestlers, just to be a bit tongue-in-cheek about it. Bone Cold? Yeah, I wonder who that could be. Overall, I think the series is a lot of fun, especially if you're looking for that specific nostalgia feel from the early 2000s, where shows like this thrive. survived. It sure brought me back and gave me the drive to dig back into the other mediums in which Ultimate Muscle also lived. From the manga series, where I have gone back to start reading it again, as well as the video game side of things, where there is a Game Boy Advance game and even a GameCube game that I mentioned earlier. At least the Ultimate Muscle franchise is still celebrated in Japan. With the 40th anniversary of the original show hitting over there, the Kinnikuman series will be getting a brand new anime to keep the legacy going strong. Were you a fan of Ultimate Muscle? If so, tell me your thoughts on the series in the comments below. I've been Jordan Fringe. Thanks so much for watching. Like and subscribe. Later.